Hi everyone, I'm Apero. I'm a member of Team Aretusa, and in today's video I will be explaining the different leader abilities for the faction Scoia'tael, and I'll be showing you how they work in game, covering a few cards that might synchronize well with those abilities, and also linking you to some decks. Well, down there we'll link you to some decks to get you started at trying those abilities out. So let's not talk too long about it, let's just go straight into it. So when we first go to build a deck, we are presented with this very lovely screen. Now, if you click on Scoia'tael, you'll see that we have six different abilities to choose from, and they have luckily been divided into basic and advanced. So we're going to start at the top and we're going to work our way down, and then hopefully you'll get an idea for what each one does. Now, we're going to begin with Guerilla Tactics. Let's just have a quick look at the description. It says, order. Move a unit to the other row. If it's an enemy, damage it by 2. If it's an ally, boost it by 2, charge 3. This means that during the game, you have 3 opportunities to move a card. Now, that card, I should say a unit, so that means a card that has a power value in the corner, not a special card or an artifact or a trap, but something that has a power value. You are able to move to a different row. When you do that, if it's on the enemy's side of the board, you damage it by 2. If it's on your side, you boost it by 2. Now, if you're damaging it on the enemy's side, if you're moving on one of the enemy's units, remember that it will be affected by armor. So if it has armor of 3, let's say, and you damage it by 2, it will go down to an armor of 1. It will not actually impact the power of that unit. So Guerilla Tactics as an ability works really well with cards that punish rows. So things such as Guerilla Tactics, which destroys the highest unit on an enemy row if it equals 20. So maybe your opponent is playing around Igni and not playing 20 points on a row, no problems. You can actually use your leader to drag another unit onto that row and make it worth more than 20. Alternatively, you can use it with something like Regis, which will allow you to really punish a row. If you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. onto that row, then you are laughing and Regis will be one of your best friends. It works really well with this ability. This ability also works really well with this simple bronze card, this 5 provision bronze card, the Dolblathana Sentry, which can either damage an enemy unit by 1 whenever it moves, or can boost an allied unit by 1 whenever it moves. So you can actually combine this with your leader ability to potentially get 3 points of damage on enemy units every time they move. The second, and in my opinion, easiest leader ability for Scoia'tael is Invigorate. Now, it's quite simple. Invigorate simply boosts all of the units in your hand by 1 point. So this is traditionally played as the very first move that you do in the entire game. You play Invigorate, and then all of the cards in your hand, or all of the units in your hand, so potentially 10 units, will be boosted by 1. Now, this can coordinate quite well with some other Scoia'tael cards. For example, the Mahakam Defender is a simple 5 provision bronze unit. Now, if you were to boost this with your Invigorate leader ability and then play it on the board, you already have the unit boosted, and that means you're already providing it with the prerequisite it needs to continue boosting itself round after round. Another bronze unit that could be useful in this deck is War Dancer, which allows you to damage an enemy unit by 3 if the War Dancer is already boosted. So essentially, if you've played Invigorate onto a War Dancer, it's now worth 4 points rather than 3, and it will then damage an enemy unit by an additional 3 points, giving you 7 points of value for 4 provisions. That's really good value, and it allows you to play this honestly very simple card in a way that will get you that bit more than it would otherwise. Normally it would be worth 4, now it's worth 7. Not too shabby. Now, the third Scoia'tael leader ability is the most popular right now, and most likely the most powerful. Now, the reason is that it essentially allows you to play a card twice. Now, what it does is it plays a Scoia'tael special card from your graveyard. So what that means is that after you've already played a special card, as long as it's in your graveyard, that means that you can then replay it. This could be any kind of special card, and it has been used in a variety of decks, including some of the biggest meta decks out there right now. I will link to 2 of those decks down there so that you can check out what some of the big boys are playing when it comes to Mystic Echo. And yeah, there's just a lot you can do with this deck, including you can play it with Harmony decks, you can play it with special card decks, you can play it with Dwarf decks, with Novigradian Justice. There are just a lot of different options as to how you can use this card to get some insane value. The 4th Scoia'tael leader ability is kind of deceptively simple. Now, what it does is it allows you to damage an enemy unit by 1, and it has a charge of 4. So essentially, it gets you 4 damage. That doesn't sound great, but where its power lies is in its combination with other units. It allows you to align certain units in certain ways that could be very powerful. An example of a super powerful card that this could be combined with is Shiru. Now, Shiru destroys itself and all other units with the same power. Now, if you play Shiru as a straight 3-point unit, this means that you could potentially destroy all other 3-point units on the board. If the opponent has a 4-point unit and a 5-point unit, then you could use your leader, 3 of your leader's procs, in order to get them down to 3, and in order to therefore destroy them as part of Shiru's abilities. This gives you a lot of opportunities to create some serious damage. So just a very powerful combination if you play it right. Just don't forget that Shiru does also destroy himself. Another card that you'll see featured in a few of my decks is Regis. Now, he is so much fun to play, and with something like this leader ability, it will actually allow you to, again, align units on a row to try to get the maximum value from Regis. He is procced best when there is ascending values, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. on one row, and Regis will destroy them all. The 5th Scoia'tael leader ability is called Deadeye Ambush. Now, if you play traps in your deck, this is one really worth considering. When you play a trap, what normally happens is that it flips over and it's just sitting there as a 0-point non-unit, doing nothing on your board. What Deadeye Ambush allows you to do is transform that useless card into a 3-point elven token. So that is kind of one way to just give yourself a few extra points on the board. Of course, it has a charge of 4. If you were to proc all 4 of those abilities, that means you get an extra 12 points in the course of the game. Now, in the example deck that I'll be giving you down there for Deadeye Ambush, you'll see a lot of traps, but you'll also see a lot of elves, and that's because each of those elf tokens does indeed count as an elf. So you can use an elf-based deck in order to get the most out of that categorization. For example, Ailerin is a super useful card to have around elf decks, and that's because she will come out of your deck, just jumps out of your deck automatically when you have 5 or more elves on the board. So she's worth considering if you're going to do an elf-based trap deck. If you're looking for some budget traps in order to try out this ability, we can recommend Incinerating Trap. Now, Incinerating Trap damages the next unit your opponent plays on their side by 5. It also has Zeal if you want to execute the order, which is to flip it over and damage a unit by 3. So this means you essentially have 2 options with it. You either leave it on the board and allow it to just hit the next unit your opponent plays by 5, which could be very useful against a lot of engine-based decks. Or if there's a specific unit you want to damage, you can just play it as a 3-point damage card. Either way is fine. But this one too, once it has been executed, it's just sitting there on your board. Well, then you can use your leader ability. You simply click on your leader, click on the trap, the used up trap, and then it will turn into an elven Deadeye. Now, Scoia'tael has a lot of different cards that have a lot of different primary categories. This includes elves, dwarves, mages, dryads, gnomes, treants, nature cards, alchemy cards. There are so many different categories, and this leader ability basically is trying to use that to your advantage. The Call of Harmony allows you to play a Scoia'tael card from your deck with 0 provision cost or less. Well, hang on, that doesn't sound very good. But wait, there's more. This value, that 0 provision cost, is raised by 1 for every unique primary category among Scoia'tael cards in your starting deck. This is not in your hand, this is in your starting deck. So when you look at all 25 cards in your starting deck, how many different primary categories are in there? Well, if you have, let's say, only dwarves, well then this card is probably not for you because there are no cards with only 1 provision cost. But if you have a dwarf, an elf, a dryad, a treant, and a nature card, then Call of Harmony could pull out a card worth 5 provision cost or less. So obviously this works very well with Harmony-based decks, Harmony being an ability that helps you get extra points with cards that are a new primary category each time you drop them. So if you combine those two abilities, then you could actually use this to play a very high-powered card from your deck. All you have to do is check your deck, make sure that there's something in there with that level of provisions or less. Your leader will tell you how many provisions you have once you're in the game, and then you can actually just pull it out and you get to play an extra card in your hand. You could use this to do a double poison, an instant poison in one turn. You could use it to make sure that you draw one of your powerful cards each time. There are many different ways you could play this, but it can be a very useful leader ability to have if you are playing a deck with many different categories in it. As usual, I will link you to one of my example decks, which you can find down there. Well, that's it. Those are all 6 Scoia'tael leader abilities. I hope that this video helped to clear up what each of them are, how they all work. You could see in the side how they all work, and to give you some ideas of the ways in which different cards can interact with those decks. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the comments. As usual, please do hit the subscribe button, and I will be bringing you more awesome beginner content in the following days, weeks, months, and maybe even years. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Bye.